Hello and welcome to another episode of DCU Daily, and we are back. And today we are talking all about. Have we seen Bizarro on set already in Superman? Did we already see Bizarro in Cleveland? Superman has been filming out in Ohio for a few weeks now, and the question becomes, because the fans want to know, will we get to see Bizarro Superman in the movie? I personally think it's a little early. I mean, this is only the first movie with David Corenswet Superman, so would you want to take that leap that early? But there are some hints potentially. If you go by some of the pictures, and we have a piece of video from the set, which may indicate there's something wrong with Superman. He's not quite behaving like himself, or as you would expect him to, or as he does behave in a lot of the other shots and scenes that they've been filming, which might lead you to believe, like what's going on is something is off. And of course, the first thing people's minds go to is Bizarro. So we have talked about it before on the show, but today we wanted to address it more directly. Maybe kind of go into some fan theories, look at the evidence that's out there that may or may not be in favor of the idea, and then we'll have some fan comments afterwards that we'll have to go through as well. We also did a poll in the live chat recently, so we'll talk about that as well. Basically, we asked you whether you think Bizarro will be in Superman. You're welcome to let us know in the comments below, but we'll talk about that too. So to do that and so much more, as always, I've got with me today John. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I am intrigued with, this theory, and I'm ready to talk about it. And I don't know if people like what I'm ready to say, but we'll see.
Well, speaking of ready to talk about things, Screen Rant. This is where I found this article, which led me down a bit of a rabbit hole. Now, we have, of course, talked about Bizarro on the show multiple times over the last several weeks, looking at the set photos. Theories had been kind of bouncing around the internet. People want to know. We have had a lot of you guys kind of like comment in the live chat, as well as just leaving your comments when you're watching the video after we have been live, and multiple theories from you guys sort of indicating how we might end up seeing a version of Bizarro in this film. And the pictures, might bear it out. Like there are certain, hints, let's call it that. But uh, I thought we had kind of like mostly addressed them all until I saw this article. And this article sort of, sent me kind of backwards thinking about, maybe let's reconsider it, because I was like, you know what, it's too early. There's no way we're gonna have Bizarro in this movie. This is the first movie in the new DCU. Why would you make that leap? It's almost as if you're gonna bring in Doomsday after introducing Wonder Woman and Batman in the same movie, and Batman versus Superman: Dawn of Justice. It feels, especially when you have so many other characters, it feels one leap too many. But this article pointed out that there's a video going around, which we have already seen pictures of this. If you clicked on the thumbnail for this video, you probably already saw one of those images where we saw Superman acting a little out of sorts. But then this article sort of linked me to a video on X from one of the folks who got a hold of one of the videos from behind the scenes. Of course, the picture referencing is this one right here, where they were filming and Superman starts to kind of act funny and then walks through a crowd out into. They cut away by the time he kind of makes the turn away from the crowd, but you could tell the people around him are also wondering what's going on. Uh, but when I click into this video, it sort of gave me a little more context as to what's going on, because my assumption up until now was that Superman's acting weird, and we talked about it as if Superman might be searching for something, maybe his X-ray vision. And I think, John, you really took that to heart and were like, you know what, that'd be awesome. A great example of Superman using his capabilities to be able to kind of see in different spectrums of light, which we have seen in every iteration of live action Superman. It was such a big part of Henry Cavill's Superman story, as Clark grows up and learns to hone his senses. But in this situation here, I look at the crowd reactions and I begin to wonder what is going on. So, John, I wanted to get your opinion on this. What do you think is going on over here?
I don't think it's anything crazy that people are suggesting. I'm going to be devil's advocate and kind of shut down the theory a little bit. I think he's just kind of shaken because he's kind of hobbling. I know that's probably what. And then he's still charred. But the thing is, we've seen other set photos where he's like being all nice, being all
Yeah.
kind, like hugging kids and all that. And you know, he's been fine. So it's like it's weird that it's like, oh, this when I think it's just like after a battle, like he's kind of just like a little dazed, but he realizes that there's another threat, so he kind of just goes off and does it. I don't think this really shows anything like Bizarro related. Um, but I mean, it's an interesting theory because I know people have, you know, stated that our Ultraman is really Bizarro and he's gonna be like a Superman clone. He's gonna look like David Corenswet, like that he rips off the mask and he looks like David Corenswet. But then he's gonna like over the course of the film kind of get more and more fucked up, kind of like what they did with Superman and Lois. And he's gonna like become like the Bizarro we all know, where he's just like this weird looking kind of dude where he's like all scarred and looks like a monster and that kind of thing. So I think that's a better theory than just like, oh, Superman's just walking around weirdly with a charred suit. Oh, that means he's Bizarro. Like, I think that's kind of pushing it a little bit
I see
silly
what you're
maybe,
saying.
but I mean,
I, s-
I wouldn't totally denounce Bizarro. I just don't if
I
we're talking about this specific video, I don't think it's Bizarro. I think
but I okay, I see your point, but think about this. The way they're shooting this, Green Lantern and Mr. Terrific, they're all standing right there. And then we know that when they shot those earlier part of that same sequence, Superman is kind of walking in behind them as Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner sort of takes the lead and be like, "Hey, you're welcome. We helped save you guys, and you should be
Venmo.
thankful." Kind of the assumption, right? The whole, I'll take Groupon and Venmo and PayPal. And Hawk Girl, of course, Mr. Terrific are right behind him, but Superman is sort of hanging in the back for a while, and maybe he steps up at some point. But this here seems to be a continuation of that sequence, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
you can see Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner still standing, like where he ended up eventually.
Yeah,
Hawk
Mr.
Girl's on the
Terrific
ground,
there
Mr.
too.
Terrific is
Mhm.
still there, but then Superman starts to act funny. Like that's the best way to describe it. He starts to act funny. I'm wondering what's going on because I mean, could it be kryptonite related? It's hard to kind of tell whether
That could be
what's
it.
going on here. Could it be something to do with his senses overwhelm him, kind of like what they did with Man of Steel, where like when Clark's growing up,
Hmm.
Zod even has to kind of hone his senses before the final battle. Or do you think this is just there's some iteration of Bizarro being hinted at as a basically kind of coming out of some sort of mind control device or some kind of aspect where Superman sort of is falling under the influence of something, right? Kind of the closest analogy I can come up with is from the world of Marvel, where in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, you find out that the Winter Soldier, has been programmed in a way where he can be
Brainwashed,
easily
yeah.
brainwashed, right? Brainwashed, and they can kind of activate it using these specific sequence of words from a book that the Soviets
Yeah.
buried and
Well,
of
that
course,
was introduced in Civil
Baron
War,
Zemo
but
finds.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But exactly, you're right. So that's introduced in Civil War. I was confusing the two movies, but
Well, you weren't totally wrong because it Winter Soldier was introduced in Winter Soldier, but then later on in Civil War that so you're technically right. So it's okay. It's fine. You're good.
right. But do you know what I mean though? Like I'm because we have seen
Yeah.
Lex Luthor on set, and I'm wondering if there's something to that effect, or if this is because obviously in the Henry Cavill version of the Superman movies, we have Zack Snyder always kept hinting at the nightmare sequence and what might happen to a future evil Superman, which was
Yeah.
more to do with the what's the name of that story? Why am I blanking on what's the famous story arc they were going for in the comics, where Superman becomes evil because Lois Lane dies? Like
Injustice.
injustice. Sorry, tip of my tongue. But like
Yeah.
that's not. It doesn't seem like that's quite what this would be. And certainly
Yeah.
after that being such a big part of
Yeah.
the DCEU, I don't think they're gonna go in that direction. But do you think that this here kind of hints at maybe some kind of mind control, brainwashing, something like that?
That could be, but I just think like I think James Gunn again, I've said this many times, he recognizes what the fans like and what they
Yeah,
dislike. And we've gotten a lot of evil Superman stories, and I think he
yeah.
realizes people are sick to death of them, and we don't want to see another evil Superman, especially one that's been brainwashed. So I think he's going to try and steer clear from that. Bizarro is one of the times where I think evil Superman would work because that's what he essentially is. He was just an evil version of Superman, originally from another universe. Um, but I just don't think that they would do a brainwashing thing again, because as well as the fact you're kind of ripping off BVS and what that was intended, the
Yeah,
Justice League trilogy and all that. Like he would have gotten brainwashed by Darkseid after he found Lois's dead body in the Batcave
right.
with the fucking plot point that even Zack Snyder said was stupid with her fucking Bruce Wayne, which would have
Well,
been
I mean, he
like
said that Warner Brothers said no. He didn't say that he said it was stupid. I think he ended up. I don't know who he credits for. Like, I think he said Warner Brothers was like, you can't do that, so he couldn't. They didn't
because
let him
it's
go in that direction.
stupid, but that's
I get
beside the
no. I'm
point.
not. I'm not arguing the merits of the idea. I'm just
Yeah,
saying. I think
but
Zack
like
Snyder
that's
was
what
the.
it was
Yeah,
with that, and I
yeah,
don't think
yeah,
James Gunn would like use that idea of like a brainwashed Superman because
yeah,
not a ton of people liked it then, and I don't think people would like it now.
yeah.
So I don't know. It just feels, just kind of. I just don't think that's right. I think they would what they're gonna do. They're gonna do that amalgamated character. If they do have a Bizarro in this movie, they're gonna do that amalgamated character with the, dressed in black. And they're just gonna call him Ultraman. And then if that's true, I still don't think it's true. But if it is true, then that's what I think they would do. I think they would, do that if that were the case.
I mean, okay,
Um,
so, but going back to that because I'm still trying to reconcile this image. Okay, when we initially talked about the sequence of images, it looked like Superman might be like looking for something, like
mhm.
because you could see he's clearly, but he's focused on something, or either that or he's completely confused. But then he seems to be walking with a purpose. When you look at the video, though, that we have been talking about, the video seems to imply that he's like hobbling a little bit. He's clearly out of sorts for some reason. He's not just like he's not walking with a sense of purpose, but more so maybe he's feeling he's like he's weak or he's confused or he's
He's weak.
lost or he's
Yeah, they
overwhelmed.
might. I
It's
think that might be a kryptonite thing rather than a
yeah,
being brainwashed thing or a Bizarro thing. So I
yeah,
think that's all that is. I don't
okay,
think in this case this video alludes to Bizarro. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just my analysis of it. I just don't think that that's the case
okay. Well, hey,
personally. Obviously,
that's fair. I'll give you that. But then let me pose this question. Let's do a hypothetical, right?
right?
Let's
Right?
just for the
Sure.
sake of conversation, let's just say this Bizarro is indeed in this story, that we do
Hmm.
get to see Bizarro, whether that's Superman right there turning into Bizarro somehow, or like the mask character that we don't quite know who that is. Maybe that character is Bizarro. Let's just say I want to pose the question. Let's for the sake of conversation say Bizarro is a part of this movie. How might Bizarro fit in the story if that is the case?
I think what they're gonna do, because I think that's what because Bizarro has been many different iterations in the comics. Initially, he was a Superman from an alternate reality, Bizarro world where everything is backwards and they talk backwards, and then um, and he says, "I am bad guy," but he really means good guy, and all that. Um, so that's what initially Bizarro was, and then later on he was a failed clone of
Right.
Superman, and that's what he became. And but sometimes he's controlled by Lex Luthor, sometimes he's just escaped. In the Red Hood and the Outlaws Rebirth run, they were sort of like a anti-hero trinity, and I really liked their camaraderie there. Like Bizarro was the anti-hero Superman, Artemis was the anti-hero Wonder Woman, and Red Hood was the anti-hero Batman. So it was sort of like this like anti-hero kind of trio that I think they did really well. And I feel like with what and that was the one in the far back, the one with the glowing eyes, the freeze eyes.
Right.
And then I think he eventually became the middle one. Like he eventually, because there was a story arc that was really dumb where it was like Red Hood, and then Red Hood gets separated from Artemis and Bizarro, and they go to like a post-apocalyptic world or something, and they like survive, and then like Bizarro gets like, and Artemis get like, shaken and gruff and all that, all
Right.
that shit. Um, so I think that's what happens. I think that's what he's supposed to look like there in the middle. But
Yeah.
Bizarro, I think if I were to take a guess, if Bizarro is in this film, I think Lex Luthor realizes, or he's already realized, that like he can't control people because they still have these pesky things called morals and
Mm-hmm.
emotions, and he can't control that no matter how hard he tries. And that's what I think the engineer is at some point. She's kind of like his henchman a little bit, henchwoman, and alluded to the theory that she was kind of a mix between um, Hope, from the Lex Luthor Man of Steel Brian Azzarello miniseries, as well as the engineer, where Hope is sort of like this character that's meant to take away Superman's like publicity, like good publicity, like, oh, she's the real like hero, and Superman sucks, like he's not a real hero, this is the hero we need to invest in. um and that's who that is. And then that's who the engineer is. But the thing is, the engineer, maybe, I mean, she's smart, she's probably a smart character, and she, maybe sees through Lex Luthor, he sees through her. But it's like, maybe there's something, maybe he blackmails her, maybe it's something. But he realizes that he can't control the engineer forever, but he can control someone who he creates genetically. So I think that Bizarro is, the man in black. um and he's this is him, this is his, that's, and that he's like sort of a bodyguard. And it's going to be one of those cases where it's like, it's not supposed to look like a U, but
Yeah.
then it like kind of does. So for the sake of like stonks and like the board, he's like, oh yeah, we call him, and he looks at his chest, Ultraman, or like something like that. Like, just like, it's not supposed to look like a U, but it just happens to look like a U because of whatever reason. And then
Yeah.
it's eventually similar to Doomsday originally, and as well as Bizarro in Superman and
Right.
Lois, his fucking disguise or whatever gets taken away, and it's revealed to be David Corenswet. Because I remember somebody saying in the comments on another day that this was possibly David Corenswet's stunt double. So we haven't seen much of stunt double because we've seen mostly David Cornsweet doing his own stunts. But again, there's a lot of this movie that was filmed without our knowledge on sound stages. Like from pretty much March to late June, they were filming, and we just didn't know it. So that was probably all soundstage stuff. So that where they can, like, be on like super high places, they're on big sort of things, and they just didn't want to screw with David Cornsweet. Well, here are like they seem like kind of lighter stunts where he's like closer to the ground. He's like catching people, and I'm like, oh, he's like probably like, I could do that. So that was also reasoning. So then he eventually, Lex Luthor sets Bizarro out. Well, at the time, Ultraman, he sets him out on Superman, and through the fight, maybe he finds like some sort of weapon, some sort of maybe he finds this type of kryptonite, because Bizarro does have his own kryptonite that doesn't weaken Superman, but it does weaken Bizarro. It's, I believe, blue kryptonite. It has no effect on Superman, but it has effect on Bizarro Kryptonians. So maybe he uses that, and he, like, because of the blue kryptonite, maybe it explodes in his face and it becomes all like disfigured, like what it was in Smallville and in the comics. But like Smallville, there was like a like guy that looked like Superman running around, but then over the course of the episode, I believe that was a Lex Luthor clone as well, or Lionel Luthor at that point, that was released, and then he becomes like more and more unstable, and he looks more and more like Bizarro. So I think that might be the case. I think that's how it would fit into the story, and then Superman defeats him and all that. And Yeah, so I think that would be the case, and he would just be a failed experiment. Um, I think that would be the most likely case if Bizarro is in the film. I don't think they'll that they equate to the
Right.
videos we've seen
So
here.
yeah, well, okay. So with that in mind, if let's just assume it's not actually Bizarro here. Like,
This,
by the way, the idea that that mystery man is, I think one of the users did point out that I think it was Justin Howell, maybe was the name of the stunt double for David Cornsweet. And we haven't really seen much of him on these outdoor sets, but it seems like whatever stunts they are having Superman do, David Cornsweet is more or less doing them himself. But yeah, it would be interesting because obviously if you have put your stunt double in there, then yeah, the size and everything and the build will match about as closely as anybody possibly could on set. So it makes sense if they went that route. This is how that would play out. But let's just assume now kind of going with the other side of the argument that Bizarro isn't in this movie. Then how do you see potentially Bizarro kind of coming into play in a follow up and like a sequel?
well, I think kind of what I was going before, but getting rid of the whole like Ultraman thing.
Yeah,
Um, Maybe it's Lex Luthor, maybe it's not. Maybe it's Amanda Waller, maybe it's Maxwell Lord, maybe it's Stag Industries. Just to get a corrupt businessman and then just kind of make that happen. Because I don't think they'll do multiverse this quickly, even in a Superman sequel, which probably
right.
would be like 3 or 4 years,
Yeah,
maybe even more so after the this film. So I think I would like to see Bizarro. I would like to see more Metallo in a sequel because I think Bizarro has been
yeah,
done well in live action, while Metallo I don't think has been in live action if I remember correctly. In terms of like henchmen that can like henchman type characters that can be like defeats like the ability to defeat Superman type of thing. So I think with that, but that's just but we're not here to talk about Metallo. We're here to talk about Bizarro. So I think um it could be a mystery sort of thing. Like it could be he's the main he's like it's kind of like
I mean, for one thing, I wanted to just mention, like, it's kind of like Doomsday, where you can't really have that be the main villain of the movie all by
yeah,
himself, right? You
yeah,
can't
you can.
carry that antagonist. Bizarro and Doomsday are similar in the way that they can't really carry the weight of being the primary antagonist in the film, like a Joker would or a Lex Luthor would.
Yeah,
So you do
which
need
is
somebody
unfortunate,
pulling the
but
strings. What was the name?
yeah,
Was it Atomic Man and Superman Quest for Peace? Superman 4? Or Nuclear
a
Man. I think it
nuclear
was
man.
Nuclear Man. I'm
Yes, it
like, it's
was
kind of
Nuclear
similar that
Man who was created by Lex
you
Luthor. Yeah,
exactly you need you need somebody pulling the strings, somebody who's kind of being who's the mastermind, and
yeah.
like Lex Luthor was the mastermind behind
But I
Doomsday
do
in
have an
Batman versus
idea
Superman.
how to make
Yeah.
it work without that.
Okay.
If they don't want to do Lex Luthor again, he's like, okay, James Gunn's like, all right, I'll play it safe. Lex Luthor will be the first villain, but I want to do other characters later on,
Yeah.
which is fair because Lex Luthor is playing it very, very safe. Um, so I would like to do again, this is more me being the experimental kind of filmmaker I am, being trying to be more creative
Yeah.
than like the typical superhero fare. But I would love to have it be like the first act of the movie. We follow Bizarro, but we don't know it's Bizarro. We just think but the thing is, we kind of like have context clues because it's only Supermaning. We don't see Clark Kent. So in like the first act, it's just who we think is Superman, just doing Superman stuff. But we like kind of see like little tweaks, like little twinges here and there where it's like, okay, we maybe it is Superman, maybe it isn't. And then like the first act twist is that this isn't Superman. This is Bizarro. But the thing is, the mystery of it all is where's Superman and where did Bizarro come from? Really play with the idea of the two different iterations that we have in the comics, the failed clone or the multiverse counterpart. So I would love like, and then like maybe have like a focus on like Lois Lane, or like maybe they'll introduce sort of like other characters, like super family characters, maybe Supergirl, maybe John Henry Irons, maybe some Sorel, Lana Lang who becomes Superwoman. I don't know, just like anyone you
Right.
want to do
Well,
it, like whoever is at that point. Um, so like eventually, maybe by the midpoint, we find Superman, and then we follow him, and so it's eventually found out who Bizarro is, and if it's a failed clone, they find out who the real perpetrator is. Maybe it's Mr. Mixia Spitlick, maybe it's Toyman, maybe it's like with
yeah.
Bizarro, it's supposed to look like an organic being, but in fact, it's a toy by Toyman, and or like something like that. I think that could be really fun.
Do you
Or
remember that picture, like that set of inspiration images that's James Gunn posted about
yes, with
Superman a
the
while
super
ago?
family. Yes.
And one of them had the super family, and it had like Bizarro and Mr. Spitlick, and some of those characters were all in there.
Yes.
I mean, we might be taking it too literally to say that he meant that all of those characters will eventually make it into
Right.
the world of the DCU, but certainly it, does hint at the idea that,
Yeah.
James Gunn has considered them potentially as
I
options.
think
Maybe not for this movie, but
yeah.
potential sequels and
But that
crossovers even.
idea, I think I had that could be fun, like more of a mystery, and like really try to do something new with a Superman film, and then make the perpetrator not Lex Luthor, and then like Toyman. That would be a really cool, because
Yeah.
he's a pretty intelligent character in the comics. So like I think something like that. And maybe you can amalgamate him with Amazo. Maybe he's like a proto Amazo, and he's just like a Superman robot or something,
Right.
and then maybe it'll allude to like a Justice League movie where they fight Amazo. That could be like that could be also be a really cool idea. Just like sort of really play with the idea of what Bizarro is and try to reinvent that. Not too much, but like just make it more creative and more fun rather than just adapting Bizarro. Because that I think that would be
Yeah.
a really cool idea for a sequel if Bizarro had to be used.
That sounds interesting to me. The only concern I have about that is the I the way you've described that story playing out, I think works better for either a TV episode like a Superman and Lois, or I mean, it's just when you're spending 150 plus million dollars, I think it's a little too risky to have that kind of an approach to the story.
Right,
Then
exactly.
again, you sort of mentioned that this would be unconventional,
Yeah, like
and
more
maybe
weirder experimental kind of idea.
yeah, like and then maybe they will be willing to take those risks under James Gunn. I just worry that I think
If it's
like
successful.
it would be hard to yeah, it's hard to pull off even if you do. But then again, like it's an iconic opening sequence can really give your movie quite the launching pad for the rest of the way. Like for example, in The Dark Knight with that heist sequence with the Joker, you introduce the villain, you create the intrigue, you set up the scale of the film, and you all of a sudden have not only just paid off the Easter egg that ends the previous movie, but you have gotten the movie off to such a brilliant start that it just gives it the propulsive momentum to kind of go the rest of the way. Of
Hmm.
course, the rest of the movie has to be good too.
Right.
But I mean, hey, look, there's a lot more to talk about with Bizarro. I'm sure we may get more hints like this in the future. If there is something else regarding Bizarro that feels a little more concrete than the video that we already looked at, we'll definitely dive into it. But John, we did get a comment from one of our viewers that sort
Sure.
of hinted at potentially how Bizarro might fit into this world and maybe how they might explain it if he were to be a character in this current Superman movie, not a sequel, but the one they're filming now. So this is a comment from a few episodes ago, where Buster Barnes, regular on the show, thanks so much for watching, commenting, being in the live chat as always. And you left us a comment saying, I think it will be like Superior Man from Red Sun, but they're calling him Ultraman instead, so eventually he deteriorates and becomes Bizarro. They might not bother doing Crisis on Two Earths.
Yeah, that pretty much what pretty much in a comment what I was saying, because Superior Man was made by Lex Luthor, and Red said to
Right,
have an American, in that case Superman, when Superman was a Russian, like uh propaganda machine type of thing.
right.
So I could see them kind of doing that, because Superior Man is sort of a stupid fucking name. So I mean that was the
I
intention in
am
the original
Superior
comic.
Man.
And
Yeah,
then because the thing is, yeah, the Crisis on Two Earths,
yeah,
the Crisis on Two Earths was the animated film that
yeah.
featured Ultraman, and all those characters. And yeah, I think that could be that. I feel like that's it. Whether it's that character, the Man in Black, whether that's actually Ultraman, or they're just using that as like an excuse and it's really another character that we don't know about, because James Gunn, as he said in his tweet, I don't allow any spoilers. I'm not that fucking stupid. Like, come on. So yeah, I think that's essentially kind of what I was saying, where he's, like, they'll have the Lex Luthor made clone. He'll deteriorate into Bizarro, and then they won't do multiverse stuff because that might be a little bit too much, especially when the multiverse is very overdone at this point. I could see them, even though I would love to see them fight the crime syndicate, that would be so awesome. But I
I mean, but
100%
but why
understand if
rush
James
to it?
Gunn, yeah,
Yeah.
and I 100, and then you know, they could just fucking say like, "Oh yeah, I'm Ultraman. Oh yeah, I fought someone like you. Have at it." And then like make it into a joke. Like that's what superhero movies now. They make it into a joke. So they could just do that, and I don't have to think too hard about it. A lot of people don't have to think too hard about it. It's just like a tongue in cheek wink nod sort
Right.
of thing. So yeah, I think that could be I think, yeah, I like what Buster Barnes was saying. I just feel like that makes the most sense if they are doing this character.
Yeah. That would be fun to see, of course. Especially, if like you mentioned, that character ends up being this masked figure, right? If that's
Mhm.
because then we know this character is already in the movie, and if that is indeed Ultraman or Superior Man or whatever the case might be, then there needs to be an explanation as to how he fits into the story. Now, I wanted to kind of end the show on another comment that I really got a nice giggle out of. I think we were laughing pretty hard at it actually. Um, so recently we
Oh,
talked about how there's a Worlds of Zack Snyder event happening at the
yeah.
Egyptian Theater in LA. Coming up, I think it's happening from July 29th,
July
if I'm
29th
reading
to
this,
August 1st. August
to
1st, yeah.
August 1st, right? And they've got basically his a selection of his filmography that's going to play with special screenings of each movie one day of the week each. So you
Mhm.
start with 300 on Monday, Watchmen, the director's cut on Tuesday, Dawn of the Dead on Wednesday, then you have Army of the Dead on also on Wednesday, it looks like. And then on Thursday, you got Zack Snyder's Justice League, Justice is Gray, before, I guess they skip Friday because Friday is a big day for new movie releases. So then they come back on Saturday with Rebel Moon, the director's cut. Now, with all that in mind, we kind of discussed the idea that, hey, Zack Snyder's Justice League is finally making it into
Yeah.
a theater for a proper theatrical screening. Unfortunately, it's not a wide release, and that definitely got fans on both sides of that part of the DC history going. Both people who loved Zack Snyder's movies and both who hated it. And this was one comment that, I mean, look, I love the Zack Snyder movies personally. I fully admit to the fact that they're flawed in their own ways, but I also think, like, for example, The Man of Steel is probably the best Superman movie made to date. Of course, not including the current one that they're filming with James Gunn, but certainly that's my opinion. Everybody has the right to theirs. This particular person has the right to their opinion as well. And miraculous with a K, miraculous 9. You had a pretty. I mean, John, I'll let you do the honors here.
Ah, yes. What Zaddy lovers hate and can't reconcile internally is that this Superman has a heart. Well, all Superman has a heart. When Snyder's had none, that's what they hate. They are broken. Which this might be a little bit mean, but like for the extremist fans that can't let the shit go, I can see why. Because it's just like the best you can do with like extremist fans who send like death threats, who are not good people. Like I'm not talking like there are plenty of Zack Snyder fans I know that are like they're like I like his movies. I really wish we could have restored the Snyderverse, and I'm not really into
Hey, I'm
James
one of
Gunn's
them.
new vision. Right? Like
Yeah,
I'm talking about people that are like, you know what? I'm not into it. I don't want to
yeah,
think about James Gunn's movies because I just don't like him, or I just preferred that, and I have his movies, so I'll stick with those.
right.
So we have all those, and those people are fine. They're great. Like there are plenty of Snyder fans that are like, you know what, it sucks, and I'm not really into this, but it's okay. The people that are like genuinely, and I would like to say this is a small vocal minority of people who do this sort of thing. So they are the ones that kind of ruin it for everyone else and feel the need to kind of do that sort of thing. So the best you can do when it comes to extremist fans is just laugh at them, because then they look pathetic. Then they look like
Yeah.
little bitches, and it's like, oh, you're really whining and crying over a movie, like, haha,
Right.
you're a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best you can do,
Yeah.
is when you're when these people who like wish death upon people,
That's
and that
extreme.
kind of
Yes.
thing,
That is pretty extreme.
um and like people who like, I wish James Gunn would drive off a cliff, like that kind of like fucked up shit. It's okay to laugh at them, because then, and tell them they're broken, because that's their fucking like
I
man
mean, I think
babies
it's
and all that
still,
shit.
yeah, you don't have to be
Again, the
mean about
vocal
it,
minority.
but
Not all
yes,
Snyder fans are like
vocal
that. I would
minority.
like to say
Yes.
small vocal
Small.
minority who do
Yeah.
this sort of thing.
Yeah. Although I will say, like, I get a pretty good laugh out of the
Oh
what
yeah, that
Zaddy
was
lovers
funny.
hate. Just like Zad, like I'm like I need the hashtag Zaddy lovers to be a thing, because that would be just be
Yeah,
funny.
although not the
Um,
correct terminology of zaddy,
not that, no, but I'm
but
just
we'll take it. We'll
it
take
it
it.
just sounds funny. Um, by the way, just I wanted to kind of mention, because I don't know if I mentioned this at the start of the show. We were talking about Bizarro, so if you guys joining in late or watching the latter half of the video and want to know more about what our thoughts about the idea of Bizarro Superman being in this new movie that they're currently filming out in Ohio, and it's set to release next year in the summer months, of course, the kicking off the new DCU. We had a poll on a live poll on the show recently where we asked you guys what you thought about, like, is Bizarro, I just simply said, is Bizarro in Superman, yes or no? And you guys mentioned 62%, or you guys voted rather 62% in favor of yes, 38% no. So to just kind of, to put a period, on this episode, to kind of summarize it all, at least you guys watching seem to be at least the majority of you seem to believe that Bizarro is in the movie. And there's been a number of hints, whether it's the masked figure, whether it's Superman acting funny in one of those sequences that we keep showing. Um, it's possible. I mean, how they kind of tie it in, because we have seen many different iterations of Doomsday, for example, with different backstories of how you get to that character and how
Hmm.
that character comes into existence within the world of the different stories. We've also seen different iterations of Bizarro, and one of those iterations could be what we see, or maybe something completely original that's some, like you said, amalgamation of different kind of comic book based stories and characters and versions of Bizarro. So just kind of tying it back to you guys, 62% of you said that Bizarro is indeed in Superman. So we'll leave it up to you to tell us what you think based on the conversation we have had today, the theories that John has laid out. And if you are indeed somebody who considers yourself as Addy lover, do leave that hashtag in the comment down below. And of course, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, and hit the notification bell so you know when we are going live with the latest from the world of the DCU and any other DC project, whether it's Joker Folie 2, whether it is the Penguin, Batman Cape Crusader. There's so much more that we had to talk about in the coming months, because DC is about to really pick up. As good old JR will say, business is about to pick up in the world of DC. So, and of course, hit the subscribe button. That way you will always get our latest videos and live shows up in your feed, and we do appreciate that. So John, I mean, as always, it's been fun talking about Bizarro possibly being in this new Superman film. We'll find out. We will find out when the movie comes out next year, and who knows, maybe we might get more hints, maybe even some level of confirmation. Maybe James Gunn might give us a sneak peek, an inside look at Comic-Con that's coming up, so we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for that too. But until such news comes around, we are just left to wonder whether Bizarro is going to be in Superman or not. And you guys seem to think he is. The majority of you do. And if that were to bear out, then it would be pretty fun, because I certainly don't want this to be just a straight Lex Luthor as the villain of the film. I would much rather have there be
Yeah.
another antagonist, kind of maybe a secondary antagonist. And if that is Bizarro, that'd be fun, because we haven't seen a live action Bizarro in a movie in a long time.
Well,
Or
I mean, if you
yeah,
count Nuclear Man and the deleted Superman clone that was in
still,
Superman 4,
dude, that was 1987. Like
yeah.
it's a long time.
And
Like
we want to forget about Superman 4 as well. So,
yes, we do. I mean, Quest for Peace. I mean, their heart was in the right place, but the movie was
yeah.
definitely not good. But yeah, with that said, like and subscribe. Leave us your comments down below. Are you a Zaddy lover? What do you think about the the epic worlds of Zack Snyder screening that is coming up in later this month in July? And of course, what do you think about the idea of Bizarro being in the new Superman movie that James Gunn is currently filming out in Ohio? We'll see you back here on the next episode of DCU Daily. Until then, John, Zaddy, lover.
Zaddy. Lover.